And so tonight we're here to talk about a topic that should be intimately familiar with many people in the audience: student debt. Um, what is its purpose? And uh, uh, why is it something we really need in society today? Um, no worries. Uh, well, hello everyone. I am Dylan with the International Marxist Tendency, and welcome to the role of student debt in capitalism. Um, if you want to learn more about us and what we're about and all the things we do around town and around the world, you can look us up at Marxist.com, or if you want to subscribe to our newspaper, which I highly recommend you do because the articles are top notch. Um, you can go to our link at donorbox.org/IMTMadison. Um, in terms of the style of this event, it comes in two parts. This first part will be streamed over uh, Facebook and through YouTube, and the second half of the event will be non-stream discussion happening through Zoom. Um, the links to that Zoom call will be posted after this stream uh, on the Facebook page for this event. Tonight we're here to talk about student debt, a topic that I hope isn't intimate, you all aren't intimately familiar with, but statistics would say you probably are. Um, Essentially, why is it a thing that exists, and how have things gotten to a point where it's an issue that uh, plagues millions of people in the United States today, where they have debt uh, that they simply can't climb out of. Millions of workers have accumulated this large amount of debt purely for having the audacity of wanting to better their life and learn new skills by going to college and getting advanced training. Um, this uh, this accumulation of debt not only uh, proposes a huge issue for many people who are struggling with it now, but this will also compound with time. Eventually, the contradictions that led to this uh, huge amount of debt without debtors to pay it off will eventually explode in all number of different crises. And this really shows a fundamental failure of capitalism to truly address these problems, not only of uh, the rapidly growing amounts of debt, but also the incredible need, especially now, for the economy to have people in very skilled lines of work that require a lot of training. Uh, Even more than that, though, we're here to talk about why things are the way they are. Why is there student debt? Why is education not a right? Why must we struggle under the weight of these financial burdens for many years of our lives? Here to talk about all this and more is Comrade Simone, and I'll leave it to her.
Cool. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Liam, too. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. My name is Simone. I am a Marxist, and clearly I'm a member of the IMT, a proud member of the International Marxist Tendency. And as Dylan said, the focus of tonight's discussion is going to be on student debt, the crisis in the US in particular, although, of course, wreaks havoc in many of the advanced capitalist countries, and debt is no stranger to working people of the world. Its role in the economy and what can be done about it from a Marxist perspective. If my timing is right, I think this will be a short introduction, probably about 20 minutes, and I'll hopefully be able to cover the ground. And as Dylan said afterwards, if you click on the link in the comments, you'll be able to access the Zoom room and we'll have our discussion. So we hope you'll join us for that. So a little bit of context, I think, first before getting to the question of student debt in particular. So the coronavirus pandemic, as many of you, we've all experienced firsthand how this pandemic has really kind of shown, it's visibilized and really revealed all of the underlying horrors of capitalism. And capitalism is this economic system. It's based on the exploitation and oppression of the working class, who, under the system, were required to sell our labor power for wages in order to survive. And from rising poverty and unemployment, homelessness, and climate chaos, to brutal police violence, femicide, incarceration, and now the atrocious return of forced sterilizations being carried out by ICE at the border, all of these nightmarish conditions are a direct result of the capitalist system, its hired politicians, and their relentless pursuit of profit at the expense of human lives. It's this profit-based system, this profit-based production that drives a system into periodic crises like the one we're experiencing today. And during an economic crisis, all of these hardships faced by the working class only get worse as the bosses and politicians will try to squeeze as much value as possible out of workers while keeping labor costs down, so keeping wages down. In other words, it's austerity. It's massive cuts to wages and benefits, decreased spending by the state on public services, increased taxes, et cetera. But by attacking the wages of working people, the capitalists are in effect making it more difficult for the working class to buy back the commodities, the value, the objects of value that are produced for the market. And so this gives rise to the central contradiction and crisis of capitalism, which is overproduction. The capitalists can't sell all of what they've produced because there's no market for it. So relying on credit, the promise of a future payment, is one way that the ruling class, it's really a main solution that the ruling class has used in the last decade, several decades, to kind of wiggle their way out of this problem. And so credit is used to artificially increase the purchasing power, the buying power of the working class, make it temporarily easier for people to participate in the market, to quell this crisis of overproduction. And in turn, it allows the capitalists to continue expanding the market beyond its limits. But inevitably, the system of credit and debt, it can only postpone a crisis. It can't resolve one, it can't resolve it. It can't get rid of the crisis that is inevitable, that has been building for quite some time. And this, we call this the organic crisis of capitalism. It's because of its own inherent contradiction of you have this private accumulation of wealth that's socially produced. The labor power of workers, we're not getting paid back the value of what we create, and so that surplus value is extracted by the capitals and further invested into more and more markets, and that expansion leads to imperialism and this kind of global takeover of the world. And so as Marxists, we're internationalists, and we really believe that the only way to really solve the student debt crisis, as a form of credit, student loan debt, is to overthrow capitalism, is to rid ourselves of this system that is based in profit and not based on need. So the crisis we're living through today, it's as deep and far-reaching as it is precisely because of the preceding decades before, the credit boom following the slump of the 1970s. And, we never really recovered from the 2008 recession. And so people, we've been in this prolonged state of austerity for quite some time. There's rising inequality everywhere. People don't have jobs, we're underemployed. People are really struggling right now. And it's against this backdrop that, talking about student debt, student debt totals have totally skyrocketed in the last decade. Americans now owe more money borrowed to pay for higher education than at any time in history. Some 45 million, 1 out of every 5 adults, owe more than 1.64 trillion in student loans. which surpasses the total credit card debt by nearly 590 billion. So what this means is that student loan debt is the second largest category of consumer debt in the US after home mortgages. So it's like one of the biggest lifetime expenses by far. And this burden of being saddled with thousands, often tens of thousands of dollars, for some hundreds of thousands, depending on what school you go to, and what you're practicing. This student loan debt makes it nearly impossible for millions of workers and youth to make ends meet. At a time when, as I said before, declining wages and unemployment are already, eroding our living standards and making it really hard to get by. So the role of student debt, in our economy, similar to other kinds of debt, there's auto, business, personal, credit card debt, home mortgages. All of these different types of debt kind of play into the same. Um, they fulfill a similar function in that they kind of keep the system of capitalism afloat, in a sense, through this system of credit that allows the market to expand without actually providing a dignified life for everyone. And it's this central contradiction that leads to crises like the one that we're experiencing right now. So who profits, or who benefits from student loan debt? So um, and why do we, why is education important? I think that's like, it's kind of a given. We, as Marxists, we believe that education is highly important, and people should have the opportunity to pursue whatever brings them joy, and whatever they want to pursue in life. And education can provide that skill and that training. We believe that education is the foundation of any healthy society. A quality education, but it has to be affordable and it has to be accessible. And when we say affordable, we mean free. So I think, in thinking about who benefits from this, the student loan system is totally nebulous and complex, and there's a lot of different players involved. But just speaking from my own experience, when I had loans, I remember having like 3 or 4 different loan service providers, and it kept changing, and it was really difficult to keep track of what I even owed. And that kind of opaqueness of the system and not being able to understand it, as someone who's indebted and already feeling kind of that threat and that vulnerability, of being someone who's in this position of um, indebtedness, I guess. I think that it makes it kind of a really insidious system that, it's intentionally opaque. It's not meant to be, understood or a smooth process for people who are trying to pay back their debt. And so, you have like the loan service providers, you have like Sally Mae, like these private loan servicers. You have the big banks, you have for-profit colleges, you have the guarantors and the collection agencies. So I think that's one of the most upsetting dimensions of student debt is what happens when people go into default. And let's see, I lost my notes for a second. Where am I here? Yeah. So just some facts about people with defaulted loans, because that's when you can't pay your loans, right? So what happens when you're unable to pay your loans back? So 7.6 million people have loans in default, so they can't pay back their borrowed debt, according to the initial arrangement. So their funds are sent to a collection agency. And unlike the billionaires who can continue to make money under the protection of bankruptcy laws, students or people with student debt can't have their debt discharged even if you declare bankruptcy. So just a reminder that there's bailouts for some, but not for all, right? And these debt collection agencies, they're one of the main beneficiaries of the student debt crisis. So when they need to collect, that this will involve lawsuits, wage garnishment. So this is where the employer, withholds an indebted worker's earnings through a court order or other legal proceeding. They'll take your tax refunds. I thought this was kind of interesting in reading more about property liens, like literally like the notice put on your house, it's attached to your home and saying that, a creditor claims that you owe them money and that this lender can claim your property. And so it's kind of like this threat and this coercion and this really, really kind of disgusting system that basically makes it so you have to pay back your debt. And if you can't, like, your life is going to be ruined. And so um, I think something that I learned that I didn't know before in planning for this talk was that all of these methods that I just mentioned are more like traditional methods, right, for debtors to collect their money. But as the crisis of capitalism deepens and it's in its deepest yet, in living memory, they have to find new ways to coerce debtors and to collect their money, because the debts have to be repaid at some point, right? And that's why crisis is inevitable, is you can't just postpone and put off debt forever. Um, so something that they're doing now is actually revoking state-issued professional licenses and even driver's licenses from people who don't make payments on time. And I believe this is currently practiced in 20 states. So, these are people who can't get out from piles of debt, whether that's because they have children, of old age, if they're experiencing illnesses or having emergencies, low, irregular, or non-existent wages. These are all, it's ordinary people who are, driving themselves into this, into these really terrible situations because there's no other option if you want to get an education in the United States. And we're told there's this narrative, right, that you go to school and you get a degree and then your prospects are better, that you can find a job and you can provide for yourself and for your families. And there's kind of that even just thinking about the American kind of US exceptionalism of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and like paying your way through college or this and that. There's kind of all these social narratives that make it seem not only that going to college is that you have to do it, but that if you do, that there's something on the other side. There's this promise of a better life on the other side. But now millions of students are graduating and entering a world that's totally abysmal, where there aren't any job prospects. The jobs that are available pay starvation wages. And this is the reality of the capitalist system that we live in, and this debt serves to keep the system going. It serves to keep profits flowing, and all of these different entities, these capitalist entities like the collection agencies and the lenders and the for-profit colleges, and like the University of Phoenix. If you haven't read about them, I would look them up. They're um, a pretty disgusting institution, but just really preying on everyday people, and trying to make a profit off of you know off of this totally public, what should be a public, free, and high quality, accessible service of education, of providing a quality education for everybody. Um, and so I think something I wanted to mention too is that in periods of crisis and really just generally all the time, we're told that we can't pay for that, or we can't, how are we going to abolish student debt? And I think Bernie Sanders came out with a pretty robust plan, for making universities and colleges tuition free and for abolishing all debt. And but all of that is it's one thing to fight for educational reforms or certain kinds of like abolishing debt is a great thing. But if you're not going to also tackle the root, if you're not going to get to the root problem, which is capitalism, um, these institutions and these systems, it's a systemic problem, and these systems aren't in isolation from one another. They're all interconnected, and so you can't expect to work within the Democratic Party when you have Democrats who are totally beholden to kind of the invisible hand of the market, and to their desire for profit, and to the people who pay them. And so it is possible. And I think that's something that people are coming to realize more and more, is that, we're told that it's kind of like this idea of like, oh, we live in a world of scarcity. And it's like, well, yeah, there are food shortages, in sub-Saharan Africa, and there are food shortages in, urban cities in the United States, and people are starving. And then you have, farmers who are dumping their milk because there's not enough, not enough people to buy milk. And it's like this totally um, twisted logic where it's like, it's poverty amidst plenty, right? So it's like this idea that we don't have enough, but really, um, you know, because of capitalism's productive forces and because of the advancements in technology over the last several decades, and because of that kind of aggressive expansion of markets, we have a superabundance. We're living in a world where we can totally provide, tuition-free education to all people. We can provide housing for all people. We can clothe and feed everyone. It's not, as Marxists, we're not asking for much. We're not asking for anything that's, well, we're not asking either, we're demanding it. But the idea of like, we're not asking for much, these are the basic necessities for a dignified life. And, education is a central, is a foundational, institution for the continuance of society. It's how we transmit information from one generation to another. It's how we learn and grow and increase our ability to help one another and to sustain ourselves on this planet. And the fact that it's something that uh, that capitalists are able to make money off of, off of people who want that for themselves and for society, I think um, is really heinous. And I guess I want to end with what can be done about it. We'll have a discussion, so I hope that there are questions folks have. And I'm a little all over the place, but I think we can kind of end it on a positive note, which is important. We're optimists, we're revolutionary optimists. It's one thing to have a critique of capitalism and to be anti-capitalist, but it's another to actually study, what can be done about it. And Marxists, we have a program, that we're fighting for. And we encourage you all to go to our website and to read our program, socialistrevolution.com. But yeah, so what does our program involve? Abolish student debt, expropriate all the universities and colleges and run them under one unified socialized education system. Um, nationalize and democratically plan, our entire economy, the banking and insurance system. Nationalize, expropriate the Fortune 500 companies. You elect workers to a government who decide, collectively how to run society based on need and not on profit. And I think that, I'm not speaking so specifically about education right now, and I meant to, but I think all of this is so interrelated. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that, we can provide everyone with a quality education and so much more if we overthrow this system that is hell bent on making sure that profits are kind of reign supreme over people. And I think that we have to overthrow this system. There is an alternative. It's called socialism, and in our lifetimes, I think it's possible. We think